everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Guam PUC, January 26th. It is 6:35 p.m. All commissioners are present with the exception of Mr. Pedro Guerrero. First item is approval of the minutes of December 19th, 2022.
Motion to approve, subject to corrections.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item is GPA docket 2306, LEAC filing authorizing the management of the Guam Power Authority to petition the Guam Public Utilities Commission to maintain the levelized energy adjustment clause for the period from February 1, 2023 to July 31st, 2023. Fred.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. So in its petition, GPA has requested that the LEAC factor be maintained at the present level for the next 6 months from February 1, 2023 through July 31st, 2023. You'll remember that in October of last year, the PUC increased the LEAC factor from roughly 29.5 cents up to nearly 32 cents per kilowatt hour. And that new rate was applied to meters read on or after November 1st, 2022. That LEAC rate has been in effect since that time, up to the present. In this matter, the CCU did authorize GPA to file a petition which would maintain the LEAC factor for the next 6 months. In its original petition, GPA basically argued that the LEAC factor should be kept the same because of the under-recovery balance. And of course, the Commission has looked at that balance many times over the past year. The under-recovery balance is basically the amount that ratepayers owe to GPA, the unpaid amount for fuel expense that GPA has already incurred. And over the past year, certainly the LEAC factor or the LEAC under recovery balance has gone up and up. As of November 1st last year, it was roughly 41 million. GPA anticipates that if the current LEAC factor is kept in effect for the next 6 months, that's the 0.318576 cents per kilowatt hour, that as of July 31st, the under recovery would be 8.3 million. Now, this was the original petition that GPA filed. However, when in January 17th, GPA always does an update of the fuel prices under our LEAC procedure. And at that time, their filing had some, I think, good news, which is that if the current LEAC factor is maintained, the under-recovery balance owed by ratepayers as of July 31, 2023 will be $915,000. So effectively, if the course is stayed and the LEAC factor remains the same, the under recovery balance will essentially be obliterated and almost back to zero, possibly maybe even at zero. Now at the same time, I did want to advise you what the fuel prices have been doing, because I think for the most part, as we know, they've been going down. And I gave you some comparative prices. When GPA filed its petition on December 7th, 2022, the RFO, UL, SFO fuel was $159.29, the average price per barrel. And for diesel, about $120. But if you look at the update prices, the diesel price was $133 per barrel, or I'm sorry, the UFO price was $133 per barrel, and diesel at still about at 120. So, but overall, it seems the prices have gone down somewhat. So the question is, when do the ratepayers get to take advantage of this decrease in fuel? Well, I would suggest that the fact that fuel prices have gone down should not be a basis for not continuing the present LEAC factor, because as long as there's an under recovery, steps should be taken to recover the amounts owed. So for now, the ALJ recommends that the commission continue with the present LEAC factor. I also noted in my report the existence of Public Law 35736. Now that has already provided ratepayers with at least some relief. Under the Programan Ajuda para Itaw-Taw Tad Energy Credit Program, customers will receive another $500 credit towards their power accounts. That's paid in $100 per month for December, January, February, March, and April. So my point is, this is an opportune time to deal with the under recovery. We won't have a better time than this, since there's some protection for the ratepayers in this law, and the ratepayers at least have been used to paying that amount for the past number of months. Now, it's obviously still very high, but I think that if the courses stay here, I called it a good possibility that for the next LEAC period, beginning in August 2023, I would think the LEAC factor will go down, but that, of course, depends on what happens with fuel prices in the next 6 months. I have prepared an order for your approval, and in that order, I listed not only the residential rate, but also secondary, primary, and transmission rates for the LEAC. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Fred. Does GPA have any comments on this, Mr. Kim or Mr. Balfa?
Yes, thank you. I think you're going to come in shortly, but I'll give a introductory remark. When they come to give you the details of all, they not or answer any.
There he is. Oh. Graham, talk fast. This is your moment.
No, thank you. Also right there.
He was about to do a song and dance.
I was.
You had a coup there for a little bit, John.
Oh, I'm sorry. I came up to the 7th floor and then went down and thank you. So, yeah, thank you, commissioners. First of all, I believe, I'm sure I missed the early part of the meeting, but Fred's recommendation to hold the LEAC, I think that's where we are, because the prices of fuel has come down. It was up to around 150 plus. It's down around 120. However, under recovery is still at 33. So, as far as fuel oil is still 10 years. I see activities up and down. So, I think we need to recover more of our money and then take a look at it from there. No? That's my recommendation on that. I'm open to questions.
Thank you, John. Any comments from the commissioners? Any questions? Pete? Okay.
This is for Mr. Kim. John, if the under recovery balance as of July 31st, 2023 will be 8.3 million, based on the current fuel rate cost and the keeping the LEAC the same, and then it goes to 915,000 in the same July 31st. What was the difference? Or what's causing that to drop from 8 million to 900,000? Is that just additional declines in fuel prices?
Yes, it's additional decline in fuel prices. So what we do on our projection, we look at the Morgan new cost, 5-day average. So we looked from January 9th to January 13th, and they gave us the future prices of the fuel. So we take that with this kind of
Yeah.
the food price, it dropped.
Right. So this is just, the 915 is based on the declining, and the current price today, not further decline.
December
It includes current prices, we have plus the projections. Plus the projections that we get from Morgan Stanley. So when we get projections, this tell you, they tell the what the future price looks like based on the current contract. So we look at February, March, April, May, June, and July, and we take that as a basis to do our
So if there's
forecasting.
further decline, then essentially it is possible that we could end up with zero before July.
Yes,
Correct, right? And then
Yes.
at that point, we'll come back and readjust the LEAC.
yes. That's correct.
And I think presently, John, we're $33 million in under recovery at this moment.
Yes, in December it was about $35 million. We're projecting on January down to $33 million.
Okay. And I'd remind everybody again that we're not locked in for the 6 months, whatever our decision is. Many, many times we've intervened at various times through the 6-month period to recorrect up or down, depending on circumstances. So we can still, if we were blessed with lowering fuel prices over the next 6-month period of time, we can intervene at any point in time.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. Anything else?
Motion
So-
to approve?
And Rowena seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Very good. Thanks, GPA.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
Next item is GWA docket 2304, petition to ratify and approve final payments to Black Construction Corporation for the completion of the Northern District wastewater treatment plant upgrade. We have an ALJ report and a proposed order. I believe this is yours, Joe.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Just
go
for
ahead,
the
Mike.
record, my law firm represents GWA in some pending litigation, so I think it's best that I not participate in this topic.
Very good. Mr. Pangilinan recuses himself from this particular docket. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this matter is before the Commission pursuant to a petition to ratify and approve final payments to Black Construction for the completion of the Northern District wastewater treatment plant upgrades. According to GWA, back in August of 2016 and April of 2018, the U.S. Department of Defense, specifically the Office of Economic Adjustment, awarded GWA with grants to fund water and wastewater improvement projects, which included the upgrade to the Northern District treatment plant. And according to GWA, these grants were issued to improve the system so that its infrastructure could support the relocation of U.S. Marines and their dependents to Guam, and that these grants totaled over $173 million. And from that $173 million, about $122 million was set aside and authorized by the CCU for the Northern District wastewater treatment plant upgrade project. And so with that authorization, GWA then issued an invitation for bid, whereby 5 contractors responded to the bid, but Black Construction was ultimately awarded the upgrade project. So in 2019, the CCU authorized the Black Construction contract at a cost of $122 million, along with a 5% contingency, which added another $6.1 million. And then GWA and Black Construction entered into a contract for this project. And so in its petition that's before the Commission today, GWA requests that the PUC authorize an additional $6.7 million in bond funds to pay Black Construction for costs to close out the project. And as described by GWA in its petition, the upgrade and expansion project was considered urgent and prompt. Construction activities were required in order to meet the awarded federal grant schedule requirements, and the opening of the Marine Corps base, now known as Camp Laws, from which the plant was planned to receive additional wastewater flows. Regarding the contract, which I reviewed, the bid involved 39 discrete project items, such as the construction of a new secondary wastewater treatment plant, the repurposing of existing facilities, demolition work at the existing plant site, upgrades to existing pump stations and force mains, new plant upgrades such as oxidation ditches, secondary clarifiers, upgrades to the existing dewatering facility, upgrades to the existing septic facility and force main, new yard and infrastructure at and between the existing plant and the new secondary treatment facilities, upgrades to existing laboratory and control facilities, just to name a few. And the cost for these discrete project items range from 3.6 million for mobilization to 14 million for project management. The construction cost ran about $332,000 for demolition, about 10 million for new headworks, about 10 million for secondary clarifiers and scum pumping station, about 6 million for UV disinfection system, about 4 million for an aerated sludge storage facility and pump station. And all of these costs are listed in the bid package that was submitted by Black Construction. But that just sort of gives you an indication of the construction costs that were listed before Black Construction completed the contract. And so while GWA received a total of $122 million from the Office of Economic Adjustment to fund this contract, GWA had already anticipated that there might be a budget shortfall despite this federal funding. And so they included the wastewater treatment plant secondary upgrades project in its 2028 bond series as a project that would receive funding from the bond proceeds. And in 2020, this commission approved the budget of about 7.5 million in GWA docket 20-03 in order for GWA to fund and complete the Northern District wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And as it would turn out, because of delays caused by the pandemic, like travel restrictions affecting equipment, global supply chain issues, increased supply and labor costs, the project resulted in delays and increased costs to the contract, which thereby requires the additional 6.7 million in order to close the contract with Black Construction. GWA has submitted that the commission need only ratify about 3.7 million for payments already made to Black Construction, as well as the commission to approve an additional amount of 2.9 million to pay all outstanding claims and final change orders that it has with Black Construction. And as mentioned earlier, the funding source for this 6.7 million would be from bond funds. And so based on this record, Mr. Chairman, there's no doubt that this Northern District wastewater treatment plant is a vital and crucial expansion and is significant for the community. And more specifically, the upgrade and the expansion of this plant is necessary to provide treatment with secondary standards that comply with the NPDES permit, which ensures long-term reliable operations and which will support the relocation of the U.S. Marines and their dependents to Guam. Therefore, I recommended that the PUC authorize the amount of 6.7 million in bond funds to close out its contract with Black Construction, and I submitted a proposed order that would set forth PUC's authorization of that amount.
Thank you, Joe. Miguel, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to say that the total grant funding that we received from the Department of Defense was $173 million, which was anticipated to fund not just this project, but a program of projects, all of which needed to be completed by the time the Marine Corps base was ready to open. In 2016, when I first came on board, one of the first things I had to do was convince the Department of Defense that GWA could handle this program of improvements. And at that point, the amount of the proposed funding was determined by a cost estimate that was done by Department of Defense engineers and consultants. And that really set the maximum amount that was going to be provided via grant funding. When we did convince them and they did award us the grant funds, we were concerned that those studies that were done to support that amount were done prior to my coming on board, and because of the increased workload to the construction community on Guam and the increasing prices, we did worry that we might not have enough to finish it, which was the reason why the $7.5 million was included in our 5-year CIP and in our Series 2028 bond issuance, which the Commission approved. As it turns out, that whole program of improvements, some of those projects, there were about 4 or 5 projects, a couple of the projects finished under budget, but as I mentioned, the DoD consultants prepared the cost estimate which set the amount. 2 of the projects finished over budget, and that's the reason why we anticipated there might be a shortfall. We were worried about that. And, the CCU authorized the base contract amount and a contingency, and I would just note that we are under that CCU authorized amount, even with the amount that we are asking the PUC to approve. So we've done a fairly good job of managing the cost to try and keep it below what our projections were, but because of the other projects finishing over budget and us wanting to make the maximum use of that grant funding, we are now at the point at the end of all the program where we're short and we need these bond funds to close out the Northern District plan.
Thanks, Miguel. I'll just have to say that, and I've mentioned this before, I've toured the plant. I was lucky enough to have somebody show me the plant shortly before it was finished. And it's really a remarkable thing. And Miguel, you and your staff are to be highly commended for bringing this to fruition, because this is really a very, very nice thing for Guam. And I would recommend to all my other fellow commissioners, if you can find time sometime to get a tour of the facility, it's well worth it. The Agate Santa Rita wastewater treatment plant is also well worth seeing, and so is the little one down in Pneumatic.
Pneumatic Marisa, yes.
That's the one full of eels, and there's moorhens up in the upper pond, one of my favorite little birds. So they're all great projects for Guam. This part of infrastructure is somewhat underappreciated, but very, very necessary. So good work, Miguel.
Thank you, sir.
Joe, you got a comment?
Yeah, what was the original completion date prior to the delays?
So the original completion date was December 31st, 2021. And because of the pandemic, there were delays that pushed it into 2022. We arm wrestled with the contractor on those delay claims. They wanted, I think, $4 million extra, and we negotiated it down to $2 million. So we saved $2 million in those negotiations.
Is the facility fully staffed?
Yes.
Awesome.
It is. We are unfortunately losing people just for various reasons, so we do anticipate that we might need some additional hires, but right now it's fully staffed.
Yeah, I would like to tour the facility.
We did put out a call for available times, so the offer is open, and we're actually anxiously awaiting your responses so we can schedule something.
Question.
Go ahead, Pete.
Sorry. Miguel, on, just to clarify, the 5% contingency of $6.1 million, is that used up and this is just an additional 6.7?
No, it's not used up. We are still below the contingency amount. You'll notice that one of the first things we did was negotiate with the contractor for deductive change orders to eliminate scope items that we would like to have seen done, but because we knew we were pressed for funding, that we just eliminated. The first change order on the project, I think, was a deduction of about 2.2 million, which was a brand new building. We decided to instead opt, which we built into the design, for a refurbishment of one of the existing buildings rather than put in a new building. So that saved us 2 million. So we're still below the contingency amount. It's just the bond funds that we need to close out the project.
Correct.
Are
Which we already approved for the 7.5.
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I think also you've redone the main sewer line that runs up to Anderson and through the north also as part of this project too?
Part of the program, yes. It was one of the projects that was included, and that was one of the ones that we finished under budget. I think we saved about $5 million on that. The other, one of the other projects that I will mention associated with the Northern District plant was the installation of the ocean outfall. That one, the military estimate for the construction of that was, I believe, just over $1 million, and it ended up costing us about $8 million. So that project finished before the treatment plant project, so we had to use the grant funds to pay that one off, and that's part of the reason why at the end of the Northern District project we're short on grant funds to close it out and the need for the additional bond funds.
Is there a diffuser in the Ganya too?
No. There are no current plans on the book for that, but we'll adjust that when we get to upgrading again into the secondary.
Rowena, do you have a comment?
Motion to approve GWA document.
Oh, Doris, go ahead.
It's actually following up on Peter's question. So the 6.7 is not over and above the 5% contingent. The 6.7 then is for what?
The 6.7 is bond funds that are necessary to make up for the shortfall in grant funding that resulted because of the overruns on other projects within the program. So there was a certain amount of bond funding that was used for this project, which we're asking to ratify, but the additional funds for the closeout include the additional change orders that were required because of the delays in construction caused by the pandemic. So both of those amounts combined amount to 6.7, but the total amount of the contract is still below the CCU authorized original base contract amount plus the 5% contingency.
So it's still below the 122 million and the 5% contingent.
Correct.
Of the 6 million.
Correct.
So are there any other? So with this payment, will that conclude?
Completely.
Okay.
And we didn't want to, we couldn't bring it before you until we negotiated those final change orders with the contractor.
Very good. Thank you.
So Joe, the order is partly ratifying and partly approving, correct?
That's correct.
So therefore, I move to approve GWA docket 2304.
Is there a second? Joe seconds. All in favor say aye. Okay, 5 yes votes, 1 abstention. Right. Yeah. Recusal.
Thank you very much, Commissioners.
And
Good job, Miguel.
Thank you, sir.
next, under administrative matters, GWA Water Loss Control Program Status Report by GWA General Manager Miguel Bordelio. Miguel. You're going to let us know also now tonight, since the wastewater thing is so good, you can tell us all the water losses are finished now too.
If that were true, I'd be wearing a big top hat and be carrying a bunny. I don't know if I think I passed these out the last time, but I have some kind of slides. I don't pass them over. So we submitted, I think, at the end of November, a status report on the water loss control program as required by our rate order. And these slides just kind of summarize the progress. And the primary component of our water loss control program that resulted from the work that was conducted by our consultant, Water Systems Optimization, as part of the one of 7 analytical studies that were prepared to support our comprehensive review and update of our 5-year financial plan. One of the major components of that was the district metered area program. And just to give you some context, the idea behind the district metered areas is that if you break up the distribution system into discrete segments where you can meter what comes in, and then through our customer metering program we know what goes out, the difference is what we're losing through leaks within the distribution system. And so the water loss control program is based on the implementation of this district metered areas system, and it contemplated 36 distinct district metered areas within the distribution system that were to be implemented over a 3-year period. So as of November 30th, if you look at slide 2, we have completed in year 1, which ended on August of 2022, our target was 13 district metered areas, which would mean that we would have set up the infrastructure required to meter what was going into those separate areas. And then we already have the customer meters in place to measure what's going out. Our target was 13, we completed 16, so we were a little bit ahead of the game at the end of year 1. At this point in year 2, which ends in August of 2023, our target is 8 additional DMAs for implementation. And we've already, as of November 30th, we've established 2. We had 2 under construction and 5 that we were hoping to get done before the end of this second year, for a total of 9. And then for the last year, year 3, our target was 15, but if everything goes the way we expect it to go in year 2, we will only have 11 to complete in year 3. So in terms of the progress of implementing these district metered areas, we are a little bit ahead of the curve, and the progress has been good. Moving on to slide 3, you'll see a schematic of or schematic representation of what this means in terms of the distribution system. And you can see for each of the pink boxes, those are distinct metered areas, and the square boxes with the M in them would be meters that we put in. The green ones represent district meters that we already have in place and are being monitored. The ones in the light blue boxes are proposed that have not yet been implemented. So just as an example, you can see at the end of the line on the left-hand side, DMA number 11, the meter, the little square with the M on it, that would be the meter of what is feeding into that area or neighborhood. And then we would use the customer billing data from the customer meters for all of the customers within DMA 11 to figure out what's coming out, and then we would analyze the difference. A representation of an existing district meter area, number 36, is presented on slide 4, and that shows the Mataguac Booster Pump Station DMA. For this DMA, we have 484 customers that are served. These are metered connections, and they're within the kind of red shaded area on that GIS aerial photograph. And so all of those little dots there that you see are metered accounts. So we're measuring from the booster pump station that services this whole area, the amount of flow that goes in, and then we measure the customer usage, and that represents the amount of flow that goes out, and any difference is what we're losing in the pipes contained within this red shaded area. The total length of the pipelines the mains in this area is about 6.8 miles, just for one DMA. We use, to run this DMA program, there is a web-based software solution that the meter data is uploaded into, and we use to keep track of it and monitor it. And that report from that software is presented on slide 5. And you can see on the top graph all of the daily flow in terms of gallons per day that goes into DMA number 36. The blue lines at the bottom are the billed metered consumption, actual consumption. That's the BMAC. So that's the blue lines on the bottom of each month. They're represented. The red bars above those blue lines represents the water losses within the district needed area. So you can see they were pretty significant. When we first established the DMA, our billed metered consumption was less than 200,000 gallons a day, and the total being fed into that was over 400,000 gallons a day. But if you look at the bottom, this is a representation of the water losses after a couple different rounds of leak detection. So the DMAs provide us with the data to show what our system is doing, but the boots on the ground effort is in sending out leak detection crews to go into this neighborhood using leak detection equipment proactively. So normally our leaks, as an example, the one that was reported here on Marine Drive, which I'm sure all of you had heartburn about, that is easily visible because you can see the water bubbling up out of the roadway. What we're looking for with our leak detection teams is the stuff that doesn't show up. People don't report, but it still exists. It may be low-level leakage, it may be only at the joints, or maybe at service connections, but it doesn't bubble to the surface so no one sees it. So we are proactively going out and using equipment to listen for signs of this leakage, and then we try to pinpoint it and correlate it, and then the crews go out and dig it up and make the repairs. So after a couple of rounds of this, you can see on the bottom chart our actual real water losses decreased significantly from almost 400,000 gallons a day down to less than 200,000 gallons a day. So this kind of effort is an ongoing effort. So the leak detection teams that are established, their jobs throughout the year is nothing but doing this until we get it all under control and down to acceptable levels.
Any idea how many repairs moved it in this fashion?
That data is tracked, and I don't have a slide on it, but we do have some information on the report that was submitted in November, for one of the DMAs. So we do keep track of that information, sir. I can't say that I have it very well memorized, but as an example, in the November report, we did have some charts that showed that the majority of the repairs in this one, for the entire first round of leak detection that we did, the number of repairs totaled over 300. The majority of those were on 3/4 inch service laterals or lower, and the vast majority of those were on galvanized steel piping.
Yeah.
So it's all of those older 2-inch or less galvanized steel pipes that are in the ground. Those are the ones that are giving us the largest amount of problems based on what we've detected and what we've repaired.
Thank you.
So this sample report indicates that we are making progress within each district metered area that we actively have the leak detection ongoing. Keep in mind that it's a 3-year implementation and we're only halfway into year number 2. But we are making good progress. Some of the implementation issues in this program are identified on slide 6. The first of which is staffing. We currently have 2 leak detection teams deployed. However, the consultants have recommended that in order to keep this program and sustain it and make the required number of sweeps through the entire distribution system every year, we need at least 3 teams deployed. So we need to hire one more team, and we need to provide equipment and training for 1 additional team, and that's something that we are working to accomplish. The second limitation is equipment in terms of the equipment needed to make the repairs. Currently, we've expended a lot of effort to keep our equipment working, and some of you may know that it's pretty difficult to keep heavy equipment working on Guam. There's a lack of qualified service technicians, and even the people who sell us the equipment complain about the lack of service technicians on island, and they're trying to remedy that. But in our case, we have currently working equipment, 3 sets of working equipment, which is sufficient for our pressure line unit, which handles the day-to-day leaks that are reported. For the additional leaks, based on the proactive leak detection that these teams are conducting, we need additional equipment. So we do have a procurement in place right now, in process. It's already out to bid. I think we're waiting for the bids to come in to replace some of our older non-functioning mini backhoes for the purposes of this type of leak repair. So we're hoping to get new equipment in place to support our leak detection team. So we're working on that. And the last one is what our efforts have shown, and going back to slide 5, we have some DMAs where you can see a reduction in the line losses, but then over time, they come back. And what that is indicating is we can make the repairs, but when lines are so old that they're beyond their useful service life, those leaks are going to come back in other parts of the pipe. And so you end up putting multiple Band-Aids on a pipe that just, it's done. It needs to be completely replaced. And we're finding that because we're doing this active leak detection and excavating pipes in these areas, we're getting more information on the condition of the pipe that's in the ground that we did not have previously. And so we're discovering that we do need wholesale line replacements in neighborhoods. And if you think about the age of some of the neighborhoods on Guam that were constructed post-war, those neighborhoods haven't had those types of pipe replacements. So they're 50+ years old, and it's just time for them to be replaced. So this is helping us to focus our priority on where we are going to do our line replacement projects. So that is an issue that is challenging us, and our solution for that is to put out procurements for line replacement design build contracts or design contracts, and our acting chief engineer, Mo McDonald, is here. She's done a great job at getting those procurements out. So we have several contracts that are pending award, and we're just negotiating the initial task orders on those. And as soon as those get done, then we'll have contractors working to identify line replacement projects so that we can take care of this type of challenge.
Go ahead, Ruby.
As you're discovering the post-war layout, right, of the lines, there is the redesign, correct?
Yes.
Of upgrading it so the flow is more efficient.
Yes.
Okay. Are you replacing with the PVC lines, or what kind of line is being used to replace the galvanized?
On those size, normally we are replacing with PVC. For larger transmission lines, which may not necessarily be the type that are targeted for this leak replacement, those we use a combination of PVC and also ductile iron. What we are looking at now, even for those larger lines, is, as I mentioned previously, sometimes the leaks that don't show up are the ones that occur at the joints. The more joints you have, the more opportunity for leaks you have. The emerging technology that we're looking at implementing, which we don't have a lot of expertise with yet on Guam, but is in fused PVC, which you lay the lines, and instead of having a physical joint, you use heat to fuse the PVC so the joints are eliminated, and it's essentially one continuous piece. So we're looking at implementing that for some of our line replacement projects. So
Doris?
Thank you, Miguel, for this explanation. So on this DMA 36, this is one of 18 that you have completed, right?
correct.
Okay, so on average, what are the other 17 look like? Are they about the same?
For the ones that we have already executed rounds of leak detection, there have been reductions, but for some of those areas, we are seeing that those pipes are beyond their service life, so we've made reductions, but then they've crept back up. So that's an indicator that we can't just keep repairing these, we need to replace them.
So for fiscal year 22, it just ended, okay, and we're now 1 quarter in. Usually in your audit, you're going to talk about the water losses. So for FY 22, there was, I gather then there was really no significant reduction in water loss.
That's correct. So the last slide on the
Yeah.
slide deck shows that we're about where we were before, but I would urge the commissioners to not so much focus on that number, but focus on the progress that we're making in establishing the DMAs and trust
Until
in,
you do it.
until we do it, until we
Yeah.
get it implemented, you won't really see these numbers drop. But we're taking all the right steps, and we are making progress in getting them implemented.
So fiscal year 23 should show maybe a small reduction, and then fiscal year 24 should show a much bigger reduction.
Yeah, we are hoping that once we get all of them implemented
Right.
and get our leak detection teams, all 3 leak detection teams in place, and the proper equipment and support resources that these teams need in order to effectuate the repairs, that in the years out beyond 2024, you'll start to see the drop until we get to our goals.
What do you estimate the total cost of line replacement to be? Because I know it's kind of like, you don't know until you finish your DMA.
That's a difficult question to answer. We did have in our comprehensive review and update a breakdown of the CIP with projects relating to water loss control identified, and I want to say, I don't have that sitting in front of me, but I want to say it was probably about 1/3 of our overall CIP expenditures, and if I'm not mistaken, we were looking at 342 million, so somewhere on the order of 100 million in our current CIP was dedicated to this. We are currently undertaking a 5-year update to our 2018 Water Resources Master Plan, and I've asked our consultant to focus on how our CIP might change. This will be one area because the PUC has made it very clear to us that it needs to be a priority for GWA, so that's something that they're looking at. And then the other thing they're looking at, of course, is the potential consent decree and also the emerging regulatory changes with regard to water supply and PFAS. So those changes to our capital improvement program will be put into the 5-year update, and then once that's done, I'll be better able to answer your question then.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
What you've done here so far, Miguel, is really important because basically it's the diagnostics. It's letting you know what the actual problem is, which gives you an idea of how to properly fix it. Just running around fixing a leak here and there, you can see you're just pissing into the wind, really. You really have to go after it. And then the long-term strategy might be something along the lines of, with 36 different DMAs, every year or two, a couple should be replaced on a regular basis, and you just keep going through with that so that the lines are only in the ground for maybe a 40-year life cycle or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. And you'll probably, once you get all the DMAs registered here, I would take it you're going to go after the ones with the greatest amount of leaks first.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, we're already doing that.
Yeah.
That's where we're focusing, the
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
And also the ones that are supplied by Navy water, which we purchase at a
Right.
higher rate than we can produce it ourselves. So
Yep.
that's correct. I will note that our consultant on this comes out occasionally to assess. We have one of their people full-time on the ground here, but the other folks come in, the ones that help us with the analytics, and they will be here in May sometime. And as the ALJ has attended the last briefing that they provided the CCU, I would offer that when they are here in May, if the commissioners are available and are interested, we can schedule something so that they can give you a hands-on tour, both of their work and also the web-based software that is being used to monitor the progress. And so I think that would be very beneficial to the commission if they were so inclined to sit through another briefing on this.
But when the crew is listening for the leaks, is it equipment that's picking that up at a certain level, or are they actually needing the human ear, and there's a certain art and talent to doing this also?
The human ear is needed, and I would say that it is a combination of art and science. So the technology exists, but you still have to have a good ear for it. And those, building that experience and keeping that experience in our staffing is challenging.
Yeah. I'd almost like to make a request to hang along maybe half a day or something with the crew just to see it in operation.
Sure.
I'd be curious.
Sure. Yeah, we can arrange that.
Yeah. Okay.
It was interesting watching just the leak that was occurring outside the meter from my house, and to watch your young crew pull together, and they addressed it. It hasn't moved, so it was
Those guys work hard.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. So just want to commend them because I was able to see it in action.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
Please.
The leak in again Marine Drive, was that a Navy line or was that one of our lines?
It was one of our lines. It occurred at a transition where the line was the deeper line was coming up to avoid a conflicting utility that was crossing the intersection at Route 8. And on that rise between the two fittings on the bottom of that pipe, there was a small break, and that is where the leak occurred. But contrary to what was reported in the media, there was no sinkhole. It was just rippled pavement, and we, the temporary repairs we understand are not comfortable, but we already received a quote for the permanent repairs, and that's going through the approval process and finance right now.
I'll tell you what I was thinking when I was hearing the sinkhole report at first, and my clinic's not too far away, but I was thinking the GPA project of moving the components up north, well, there goes the road, and it's going to push that project back. What a disaster we're facing here, but it all turned out pretty well. So
yeah, the guys were able to get it done.
Yeah, they did a good job, real quick. Anything else, Joe? No. Thanks, Miguel.
Thank you very much.
Did we make a motion on that one? We did. Just a staff report. Oh, yeah. Okay. Next, thanks, Miguel. Next item is staff report on attorney compensation. Fred?
We have the report before you that was prepared by my staff, my colleague.
Thank you.
You guys able to think of the results are pretty self-explanatory. Hourly rates and fees. We've done some of these other agencies.
Some of the other agencies with lower rates, probably the work required on some of those is not as great, I would think, as work for the PUC and certainly for the airport. So the comparable is closer to the airport, I believe, than the other agencies that are listed. So anyway, that's about all I can say.
Any other comments from the commissioners? I think we've already voted on this last meeting, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next item is PUC Resolution 2301, issuance of requests for proposals for PUC consultants. Fred?
Right. So it's it's getting to the time when all the PUC consulting contracts expire. That'll be September, the end of September this year. So when we went through this process in 2018, I think this month was about the time that the commission approved proceeding ahead with the RFP for the consulting contracts. I believe last year we published notice, it might have been even February. So I put in the proposed resolution that we get them out by April, but I think it'll probably be earlier than that. We're going to have a big task on this. First of all, it's a fair amount of work to get all the documents out, but you know, in terms of our consultants, there's some that haven't had work for a couple of years. So we'll see the telecom consultant, for example, and the Port Authority consultant. But hopefully, you know, I would plan to contact them and advise them of the RFP, and hopefully they will participate in this process. We've had 3 different power and water consultants, and again, whether they will reapply or what the status will be. But it's always a task to get enough applicants to make sure that all of the areas are covered. And fortunately, we were able to accomplish that in 2018. I hope that we're able to accomplish that again this time. But this resolution that I drafted, it just basically provides that the Commission authorizes the issuance of the RFPs. I did designate myself as the point man to do that, and I did that last time in 2018. So that's pretty much what the resolution provides, establishing the legal authority and the something on the process.
Go ahead, Doris.
So is the term going to be, how long is the term? Is it a 3-year or 5-year contract?
So the contracts always have been, it's called a five-year contract, but it's really 5 1-year terms. So you recall every time in September, I advise you, if you're not happy with any of the contracts, you know, from the previous year, you can terminate them. So it's really a series of 5 1-year contracts. That's the best way to describe it.
Will that discourage people knowing that you can terminate it after 1 year as opposed to, let's say, a 3-year contract with the option for you 1 year each? Because I know, for example, before that's the way we did the audits. It was a 3-year contract and with option for you 2 1 year.
We've never had anyone raise that issue as far as I recall.
And approximately how many consultants are we?
There's 9.
9.
Yeah, 1 for each of the subject areas. We have MSW now on the Solid Waste Authority, and I know they're already hoping to be involved and probably will be involved when GSWA files its rate case. Yeah, so total 9, and then there's the 3 on-island legal consultants.
12.
No, it's 6 of the subject matter consultants and 3 legal consultants.
We may have a challenge this time too, because Fred might start scaling back some or retiring entirely. Anthony, of course, works with the university now, so I don't know if he's going to reapply in any situation too. So to get some of these positions filled in the upcoming year and beyond could be somewhat of a challenge, but we'll see how the process goes. But the earlier we get this out, the better. Are we passing? We're passing this resolution this evening, right, Fred?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, can I just ask, I noticed in the whereas clauses that there's a reference to the PUC really wanting to proceed in a fair and transparent manner in selecting its consultants, but there's not any specific statement in here as to whether the Guam procurement code applies or doesn't apply to the PUC. Is that intentional, or have we taken a position on whether the procurement
We have.
code applies?
It's pretty clear after a lot of research that technically the procurement law does not apply to the PUC. That's our legal position, and we've been through the procurement law, and there's a specific portion of it that says basically it applies to the executive branch of the government. It's absolutely clear that the PUC is not within the executive branch, and there is local legislation that states that the PUC is not a part of the executive or legislative branch. If you look at that subject legally, it's rate making also usually before PUCs were established was a legislative function. There's probably more of an argument that it's actually a legislative function where the legislature delegates rate making to the PUC. But we have that law, it's Public Law 27. I've got a whole file on that, and that's where the legislature specifically said we're not in either branch. And this is always the issue, actually, that the position that the PUC took prior to 2008. In 2008, it kind of decided that the PUC would comply with the procurement law. But then in 2018, we ran into a lot of trouble with the Attorney General's office and various issues that we were raising. And the more we researched the issue and we looked at prior documents of the PUC, there's actually a resolution back in about 2000 which says that it doesn't apply to the PUC. That was a PUC resolution. So, the procurement law. Well, we pretty much follow the procurement law. I mean, we use it as a sample. We publish notices that comply with it. We generally have the same material standards, like the conflict, the affidavits of ownership, all the normal documents. But if you want my actual opinion, I don't think the commission actually would have to do that, because as I pointed out in our governing law, it basically says the commission shall retain on an as-needed basis those professional services required by the commission. So it's a pretty general, empowering statute, and I think actually to pass muster on that could require less than the procurement law. But we've decided in the past to kind of follow it as best as we can without actually stating that it applies to us, because our position is that it doesn't.
The question is whether we want to make that a little bit clearer in this resolution, because without it, could it be interpreted as us sort of proceeding because it does apply to the PUC, whereas if we're saying that it doesn't apply, but we're going to follow it because we want to be transparent, but not because it applies. We want to have some kind of something a little bit more along those lines in this resolution.
Well, we could do that. I think for obvious reasons didn't want to really publicize, the possible issue. And,
we don't want to tell the world.
The chairman could talk about our dealings with the Attorney General's office in 2018, and they were just a mess. I mean, they couldn't get any answers out to us. They wouldn't get anything done. And if we waited for them, we still wouldn't have consultants from 2018 on. So it was a mess.
So let me ask this question. If anybody were to challenge, water, let's say, a losing bill, do they have a right?
A There is, yes, there is. There have
And
been.
what appeal process would we follow?
We followed similar to the procurement appeals process, yes, and there have been a few.
What happened?
We had in some of our bids consultants that appealed, and but they didn't proceed further than a denial of their appeal. I think there was one gentleman, I want to say.
And who denied that? I'm just curious, because, for us to deny is like, that's self-serving, that's like someone wants to appeal to somebody else.
Well, yeah, the commission did. The commission did. It might have been.
Commission
I
did
can't.
not.
It was either the chairman or the administrator.
That doesn't.
And it didn't go beyond.
That doesn't give a bit of an independent set of eyes.
So it's not really an appeal as much as just a challenge.
Yeah.
It's a protest.
Yeah. Go back to the person who denied you.
But that's how agencies operate as well. It goes to the agency. The protest goes to the
But
agency.
then there are appeals. It's been appealed and appealing on the file.
Let's see who we get first. Let's throw it out there. Let's see if we can fill these positions. That's really the challenge here. Because at the end, once the staff negotiates the pricing, and then it's up to us to select.
So Commissioner Pangilinan, I don't know how you want to proceed on it. I mean, I think I didn't address that because I don't want to raise the issue in a sense. But
Red flag it.
yeah, exactly. But
Well, I understand that. I just,
whatever you.
without it in there, then I was concerned was whether it's deemed to be a position on our part. We're taking a position because of the fact that we're not putting in a disclaimer.
Well, the commission has taken that position on the record.
Yeah.
There was a dispute in 2000, and the Attorney General, I think it was Bob Kono at the time, had written a letter questioning a certain procurement that was done, and he didn't pursue it. And the commission wrote him back and said, it doesn't apply to us, and that was the end of it at that time.
Yeah, so the issue for me would be that if in a prior resolution we've taken that position, and
Yes.
this resolution, which is subsequent, we're not taking that position, then, would the subsequent later in time resolution supersede the prior? It's inconsistent. In other words, can this be deemed a reversal of our prior position? That's the only concern. But I think that we've now talked about it, so it's now on the record. So, I don't necessarily feel the need to include the language, but I just wanted to at least have it discussed.
Yes.
So I'd move to approve the resolution as drafted.
Second.
Joe seconds. All in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion carries unanimously. And do we have one more item here? Yeah, review of quarterly financial statements. Doris, this is your baby now.
Well, again, I just want to thank Lou for her good work. Overall, in our books, we have no liabilities, very few receivables. The biggest asset we have is cash. And Lou inadvertently did not go out to survey the banks. I still, because of the, I still don't think we have the opportunity to earn a little bit more interest. It's going up. And so I would like for her to successfully do it and hopefully we can.
Are we allowed to put any funds into a TCD or any kind of tax certificate deposit?
I'm sorry?
Are we allowed to move any funds into like a TCD or?
Sure.
That's an agency. No, strictly interest bearing. Yeah, exactly. Let's double it.
No, I think it's
So, yeah, that's the only thing I think, rates may still stay up high for at least another year or so. And so it would, work in our favor to try to put some money, at least 100,000.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Dora, right?
So hopefully Lou will do that, and I asked her to send out the quotes to all of us, so all of you can see.
Move some funds to a TCD.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
In this particular report, though, I noticed that you went to cash basis, and the prior.
No, okay.
Is this cash basis report versus accrual?
Well,
This
I
is-
did ask her that,
This
for
is-
some, and she said she has nobody to pay.
Right, no, this is a cash base, or cash accrual, cash versus accrual. And I remember we were struggling with some of those payables from 2004, way before our time. Somewhere along the line, there was those payables and receivables that weren't really there.
Yes.
So by converting it into a cash report, financial statements versus accrual, it balanced out to now we know what our P&Ls are and what our expenses are and so forth, right? So, but that number's still out there if we ever changed it to accrual. We never figured out what to do with that yet, right?
She has been accruing whenever a bill has come in, okay? And she pays it within 30 days, so it's a matter of, I'm not sure, let me rephrase. I don't get into that detail to know if it should have been recorded in October versus November.
Right.
It's for me at the end of the year, as long as everything is recorded. So to me, 1 month difference doesn't make a hell of a difference.
Okay.
Okay. But I did ask her, I said, when I looked at December 31st, I did ask her, no payables? She said, no, everything's been paid. I said, oh, okay.
We're like the Lannisters. We pay our debts.
So Doris, then we did rectify the issue with the program, right? Remember
Yes.
she was having a problem with that, and we thought we would pick up
That was,
some.
remember, well, you may not remember, but our payables were up into the hundreds of thousands, and I had receivables, and a lot of it was crisscrossing, and so, she slowly, and then we came back down to less than 20,000, and now pretty much everything is paid on the bond.
Good.
So that's for the balance sheet, and again, like I said, our biggest asset, we only have 570,000 in total assets, of which 569,000 represents cash. Because pretty much all the office equipment is almost fully depreciated. And with no, she had a reimbursable cost, that had been around for a long time, and that slowly got taken care of. So all those little outstanding items have pretty much been, so everything
She's
is
carrying
all
this,
current.
she's carrying, so there's no payables. Are all of this income receivables, are they all paid for? All these agencies paid up, or
Just
it's
about,
kind of just
yeah.
an accrual still? Are these all paid?
She, let's see, the one thing that she didn't put in here was the budget to actual, so I can't comment on that one. But this money has already been received to date, if you turn to the income statement. Oh, the budget to actual?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't have, to see overall.
She's listed in this income, but I'm not sure, I think there's still receivables.
So right now, we don't have any receivables from any of the agencies.
Really?
Right now, as of December 31st. She's not showing anything.
That's what I'm saying, it's showing it as income, because it's on the cash basis, but if it
Because
was
it was
accrual.
received.
Has it been? Really?
Yes.
All the agencies paid up, but right in the first quarter?
316,000 has been received.
Wow, that's shocking. Typically, we're chasing down PTI or PDS or somebody.
Yeah, we received almost 100,000 more in, let me rephrase. We reported almost 100,000 more in income
than last year.
So PDS is all paid up.
It's showing they paid 5,000.
Okay.
Yeah, they paid 5,000.
Colleen, PDS is all paid up too? Pacific Data Systems?
I think this is just listed as income, but I don't know if it's all received. Because there's.
In order to record income, you do it two ways. You debit cash or you debit accounts receivable. So all of this, since there is no accounts
And so
receivable,
all of this-
this has been received.
And this 360 is reconciled with
And
the
that's
bank
why
statement?
our cash account is quite high. The cash account is almost over 100,000 more than last year.
Good.
We're showing 569 compared to 450. Now, the regulatory account, what usually
That just
happens is
transfers for,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's in and out.
and the administrative account that still has to occupy us for the rest of this fiscal
Yes.
year.
So we've done a bank reconciliation for December 31st, 2022 on both Bank Pacific accounts, admin and reg.
She's been doing bank reconciliations all the time, and I've been reviewing them quarterly.
And her balances, she's reconciled with these numbers.
I'm sorry?
And she rebalances and reconciled with these numbers for cash in the bank.
That's right. Those little tick marks are like tick marks.
That's impressive, because it was a bunch of spaghetti earlier, but that's impressive. You
Yeah.
guys fixed it.
Yeah,
so.
everything, yeah, because like I said, when I looked at the bank reconciliation, she had items like even with Fred correcting dating back 10 years ago. Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
I knew it was
no.
Fred's fault somehow.
She cleared it all out. And I think even you had a couple that were a couple of years old too, so for whatever reason, so we managed
All
to
right.
clear them all out.
Thank you, Doris. Motion
Like
to
I said,
adjourn?
so,
Go ahead.
Like I said, we worked really, the credit goes to
Lou.
Lou, who's doing a great job, and I'm just checking and having, and whenever there is something, she fixes it right away.
We're going to say thank you to you also, Doris. Yeah.
No problem.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes.
All in favor? Thank- Oh, you just destroyed the meeting, Pete.